The Magic Faraway Tree by Enid Blyton. Saucepan makes a muddle. Joe, Silky, and Moonface were so very pleased that Joe was the right way up again. "It feels funny," said Joe. "I feel quite giddy the right way up after standing upside down for so long. Thank you, witch. How much is the spell?" "1 piece of gold," said the witch. Moonface put his hand in his large purse. He brought out a piece of gold. The witch threw it into the fire, and at once bright golden smoke came out. She took up her knitting needles and began to knit the yellow smoke into the stockings she was making. "I wanted a yellow lantern," she said, pleased. "Your piece of gold just came at the right moment." "Golly, this is a very magical land, isn't it?" said Joe, as the three of them walked out of the queer shop. "Fancy knitting stockings out of smoke. Don't let's go home yet, Moonface. I want to see a few more things." "All right," said Moonface, who wanted to explore a bit too. "Come on, I say. Look at the gnome who is selling a spell to make cats sing. Somebody has brought his cat to him. I wonder if the spell will really work." The servant of a witch had brought along a black cat. He handed the gnome 2 silver pieces of money. The gnome took the cat on his knee. He opened its mouth and looked down it. Then he took a silver whistle and blew a tune softly down the cat's pink throat. The cat swallowed once or twice and then jumped off the gnome's knee. "Will it sing now?" asked the witch's servant. "I daren't go back to my mistress unless it does." "It will sing whenever you pull its tail," said the gnome, turning to another customer. The witch's servant went off with the cat following behind. Joe took hold of Moonface's arm and whispered to him, "I'm going to pull the cat's tail. I do so want to hear if it will really sing." Moonface and Silky wanted to as well. They giggled to see Joe running softly after the big black cat. He took hold of its tail. He gave it a gentle pull. And then, oh, what a peculiar thing. The cat stopped, lifted up its head, and sang in a very deep man's voice. "Oh, once my whiskers grew so long, I had to have a shave. The barber said it's not the way for my whiskers to behave. If you're not careful, my dear cat, they'll grow into a beard, and then a billy goat you'll be, or something very weird. Oh, once my tail became so short, it hadn't got a wag." But what the grocer said about the cat's short tail, nobody ever knew. The servant of the witch turned around in surprise when he heard the cat singing, for he knew that he hadn't pulled the cat's tail. He saw Joe and the others grinning nearby, and he was very angry. "How dare you use up the cat singing?" he cried. "You wait till I tell the witch. She'll be after you, and you won't sing if she catches you." "Quick, run," said Moonface. "If he does fetch the witch, we'll get into trouble." So they ran away fast and were soon out of sight of the cat and the servant. They sank down under a tree laughing. "Oh dear, that cat did sing a funny song," said Joe, wiping his eyes. "And what a lovely deep voice it had. Do you suppose its whiskers really did grow very long?" Just then the three heard a loud noise coming along. Clankily clank, rattle bang crash. "The saucepan man!" they all cried. "He's come up too!" And sure enough, it was old Saucepan, grinning all over his funny face. He had so many kettles and saucepan on that day that nothing could be seen of him except his face and his feet. "Hello, hello," he said. "I guessed you were up here. Been having fun?" "Yes," said Joe. "I'm all right again, look. It's so nice to walk the proper way up again. And oh, Saucepan, we've just heard a cat sing." Saucepan actually heard what Joe said, but he couldn't believe that he had heard right. So he put his hand behind his ear and said, "What did you say? I thought you said you'd heard a cat sing, but I heard wrong, I know." "No, you heard right," said Moonface. "We did hear a cat sing." "Let's go and explore a bit more," said Joe. So up they got and off they went. A witch was selling a spell to make ordinary broomsticks fly through the air. The four watched in amazement as they saw her rubbing a pink ointment onto a broom handle belonging to an elf. "Now get on it, say whiz away and you can fly home," said the witch. The elf got astride the broom, a smile on her pretty face. "Whiz away," she said, and off whizzed the broomstick up into the air, with the elf clinging tightly to it. "I'd like to buy that spell," said Joe. "I wonder how much it is." The witch heard him. 3 silver pieces, she said. Joe hadn't even got one. but Moonface had. He took them out of his large purse and gave them to the witch. "Where's your broomstick?" she said. "We haven't got one with us," said Joe. "But can't you give us the ointment instead?" "Well, I'll give you just a little," said the witch. She took a tiny pink jar and put a dab of the pink ointment into it. Joe took it and put it into his pocket. Now maybe his mother's broomstick would learn to fly. At the next stall, a goblin was selling a spell to make things big. The spell was in big tins and looked like paint. "Just think what a useful spell this is," yelled the goblin to the passers-by. "Have you visitors coming to tea and only a small cake to offer them? A dab of the spell and the cake swells to twice its size. Have you a suit you have grown out of? A dab of the spell and it will grow to the right size. Marvelous, wonderful, amazing and astonishing. Buy, 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 whilst you've got the chance." Saucepan heard all that the goblin said, for he was shouting at the top of his voice. He began to look in all his kettles and saucepans. "What do you want?" asked Joe. "My money," said the saucepan man. "I always keep it in one of my kettles or saucepan, but I never remember which. I simply must buy that spell. Think how useful it would be to me. Sometimes when I go around selling my goods, a customer will say to me, 'Oh, you haven't a big enough kettle?' But now I shall be able to make kettles just as big as I like. And we can dab the pop biscuits with the spell too and make them twice as big." He found his money at last and paid it to the goblin, who handed him a tin of the spell. Saucepan was very pleased. He longed to try it on something. He took the brush and dabbed a daisy nearby with the spell. The daisy at once grew to twice its size. Then Saucepan dabbed a bumblebee, and that grew enormous. It buzzed around Moonface, and he waved it away. "Saucepan, don't do any more bees," he begged. "I expect their stings are twice as big too. Look, let's go to that sweet shop over there and buy some sweets. It would be fun to make them twice as big." They hurried to the shop, but on the way a dreadful thing happened. Saucepan fell over one of his kettles and upset the tin in which he carried the spell. It splashed up, and drops of it fell onto Moonface, Silky, Joe, and the old Saucepan man too. And in a trice they all shot up to twice their size. Silky grew to 3 times the size because more drops fell on her. They stared at one another. How small the land of spells suddenly seemed. How little the witches and goblin looked, how little the shops were. "Saucepan, you really are careless," cried Moonface, vexed. "Look what you've done to us. Now what are we to do?" Silky clutched the hold of Moonface's arm. "Moonface," she said. "Oh, Moonface, do you suppose we are too big to go down the hole through the cloud?" Moonface turned pale. "We'd better go and see," he said. "Come on, everyone." Frightened and silent, all 4 of them hurried to where the hole led down to the faraway tree. How little it seemed to the 4 big people now. Moonface tried to get down. He stuck. He couldn't slip down at all. "It's no use," he said. "We're too big to go down. Whatever in the world shall we do?" What can they do now? Joe, Moonface, Silky, and Saucepan sat down by the hole and thought hard. Silky began to cry. The Saucepan man looked most uncomfortable. He was very fond of Silky. "Silky, please do forgive me for being so careless," he said in a small voice. "I didn't mean to do this. Don't cry. You make me feel dreadful." "It's all right," sobbed Silky, borrowing Moonface's hanky. "I know you didn't mean to, but I can't help feeling dreadfully sad when I think I won't ever be able to see my dear little room in the faraway tree anymore." The Saucepan man began to cry too. Tears dripped with a splash into his saucepans and kettles. He put his arm around Silk, and 2 or 3 kettle spouts stuck into her. "Don't," she said. "You're sticking into me. Moonface, Joe, can't you think of something to do? Can we possibly squeeze down if we hold our breaths and make ourselves as small as we can?" "Quite impossible," said Moonface gloomily. "Listen, there's somebody coming up the ladder." They heard voices, and soon a head popped up out of the hole in the cloud. It was Dick's. He stared in the very greatest surprise at the 4 enormous people sitting by the hole. He climbed up and stood beside them, looking very, very small. Then up came Bessie and Fanny. Their eyes nearly fell out of their heads when they saw how big Joe and his friends were. "What's happened?" cried Dick. "We began to be worried because you didn't come home, Joe, so we climbed to see where you were, but why are you so enormous?" Joe told them. Silky sobbed into Moonface's hanky. Bessie put her arm around her. It was funny to feel Silky so very big. Bessie's arm only went half round Silky's waist. "And now, you see, we can't get back down the hole," said Joe. "I know what you can do," said Dick suddenly. "What?" cried everyone hopefully. "Why, rub the hole with the spell and it will get bigger, of course," said Dick. "Then you'll be able to get down it." "Why ever didn't we think of that before?" cried Joe, jumping up. "Saucepan, where's that tin with the spell in it?" He picked up the tin, but alas, it was quite empty. Every single drop had been spilt when Saucepan had fallen over. "Well, never mind," said Moonface, cheering up. "We can go and buy some more from that goblin. Come on." They all set off, Dick, Bessie, and Fanny looking very small indeed by the others. They went up to the goblin who had sold them the spell. "May we have another tin of that spell you sold us just now?" asked Moonface, holding out the empty tin. "I've not the tiniest drop left," said the goblin, "and I can't make any more until the full moon comes. It can only be made in the moonlight." Everyone looked so miserable that the goblin felt sorry for them. "Why do you look so unhappy?" he said. "What has happened?" Joe told him everything. The goblin listened with great interest. Then he smiled. "Well, my dear boy," he said, "if you can't get a spell to make the hole big, why don't you buy a spell to make yourself small? My brother, the green goblin over there, sells that kind of spell. Only be careful not to put too much on yourselves, or you may go smaller than you mean to." They went over to the green goblin. He was yelling at the top of his voice, "Buy my wonderful and most amazing spell. It will make anything as small as you like. Have you an enemy? Dab him with this and see him shrink to the size of a mouse. Have you too big a nose? Dab it with this and make it its right size. Oh, wonderful, astonishing, amazing." Everyone hurried up. Moonface took some money out of his purse. "I'll have the spell, please," he said. The green goblin gave him a tin. The spell in it looked rather like paint, just as the other one had. "Now go slow," said the goblin. "You don't want to get too small. Try a little at a time." Moonface dabbed a little on Silky. She went a bit smaller at once. He dabbed again. She went smaller still. "Is she the right size yet?" asked Moonface. Everyone stared at Silky. "Not quite," said Bessie. "But she is almost, Moonface, so be careful with your next dab." Moonface was very careful. At the next dab of the spell, Silky went to exactly her right size. She was so pleased. "Now you, Joe," said Moonface. So he dabbed Joe and got Joe back to his right size again too. Then he tried dabbing the saucepan man and soon got him right. His kettles and saucepans went right too. It was funny to watch them. "Now I'll do you, Moonface," said Joe. "No thanks, I'll do myself," said Moonface. He dabbed the spell onto himself and shrank smaller. He dabbed again and went smaller. Then he stopped dabbing and put the brush down. "You're not quite your ordinary size yet," said Joe. "I know," said Moonface, "but I always thought I was a bit on the short side. Now I'm just about right. I always wanted to be a bit taller. I shan't dab myself anymore." Everyone laughed. It was funny to see Moonface a bit taller than usual. As they stood there and laughed, a curious cold wind began to blow. Moonface looked all around and then began to shout, "Quick, quick! The land of spells is on the move! Hurry, before we get left behind!" Everyone got a shock. Good gracious, it would never do to be left behind, just as everyone got small enough to go down the hole in the clouds. They set off to the hole. The wind blew more and more strongly, and suddenly the sun went out. It was almost as if somebody had blown it out, Joe thought. At once darkness fell on the land of spells. Take hold of hands, cried Joe. "We shall lose one another if we don't." They all took hold of one another's hands and called out their names to make sure everyone was there. They stumbled on through the darkness. "Here's the hole," cried Joe. At last, and down he went. He felt the ladder and climbed down that too. The others followed one by one, pushing close behind in the dark, longing to get down to the faraway tree they knew so well. How lovely it would be to sit in Moonface's room and feel safe. But down at the bottom of the ladder, there was no faraway tree. Instead, to Joe's astonishment, there was a narrow passage, lit by a swinging green lantern. "I say," he said to the others, "what's this? Where's the faraway tree?" "We've come down the wrong hole," groaned Moonface. "Oh goodness, what bad luck!" "Well, where are we?" asked Dick in wonder. "I don't know," said Moonface. "We'd better follow this passage and see where it leads to. It's no use climbing back and trying to find the right hole. We'd never find it in the dark, And anyway, I'm pretty sure the land of spells has moved on by now." Everyone felt very gloomy. Joe led the way down the passage. It twisted and turned, went up and down steps, and was lighted here and there by the green lanterns swinging from the roof. At last they came to a big yellow door. On it was a blue knocker, a blue bell, a blue letterbox, and a blue notice that said, "Mr. Changeabout, knock once, ring twice, and rattle the letterbox." Joe knocked once very loudly. Then he rang twice, and everyone heard the bell go, "Ring, ring!" Then he rattled the letterbox. The door didn't open. It completely disappeared. It was most peculiar. 1 minute it was there, and the next it had gone, and there was nothing in front of them. They could see right into the underground room. At the end of it, by a roaring fire, a round person was sitting. "That must be Mr. Changeabout," whispered Dick. "Dare we go in?" Mr. Changeabout and the Enchanter. Everyone stared at Mr. Changeabout. At least he was the only person in the room. They thought that was who it must be. He got up and came towards them. He was a fat, comfortable-looking person with a broad smile on his face. "Dear me, what a lot of visitors," he said. "Do sit down." There was nowhere to sit except the floor. This was made of stone and looked rather cold, so nobody sat down. Something happened to Mr. Changeabout when nobody obeyed him. He grew tall and thin. His broad smile disappeared, and a frown came all over his face. He looked a most unpleasant person. "Sit down," he roared, and everybody sat down in a hurry. Mr. Changeabout looked at the saucepan man, who had sat down with a tremendous clatter. "Have you a nice little kettle that you would boil enough water for 2 cups of tea?" he asked. The saucepan man didn't hear, so Joe shouted in his ear, and he beamed and got up and undid a little kettle from the many that hung about him. "Just the thing," he said, handing it to Mr. Changeabout. "Try it and see." Mr. Changeabout changed again and became a happy-looking little creature with dancing eyes and a sweet smile. He took the kettle. "Thank you," he said. "So kind of you. Just what I wanted. How much is it?" "Nothing at all," said the saucepan man. "Just a present to you." "Well, allow me to hand round some chocolate to you all in return for such a nice present," said Mr. Changeabout, and fetched an enormous box of chocolates from a cupboard. Everybody was pleased. Dick looked carefully into the box when his turn came. His hand stretched out for the very biggest chocolate of all. Mr. Changeabout at once changed again and flew into a rage. He became thin and mean-looking. His nose shot out long and his eyes grew small. "Bad boy, greedy boy," he shouted. "You shan't any of you have my chocolates now, horrid, greedy children." And at once all the chocolates changed to little hard stones. Bessie had hers in her mouth, and she spat it out at once. The others looked most disgusted. The old saucepan man gave a yell of dismay. "I've swallowed mine, and now suppose I've got a stone inside me. Oh, you nasty Mr. Changeabout, I'll show you what I think of your chocolates." And to everyone's surprise, Saucepan rushed at Mr. Changeabout, knocked his box of chocolates over the room, and began to pummel him hard. Biff, smack, biff, smack. Goodness, how the Saucepan man fought Mr. Changeabout, and Mr. Changeabout fought back. But what was the good of that? Saucepan was so hung about with pans and all kinds that nobody could possibly hit him anywhere without grazing their knuckles and hurting themselves very much indeed. Clang, clatter, clash. Kettles and saucepan made an enormous noise, and everyone began to laugh. Really, Saucepan looked too funny for words, dancing about on the floor, hitting and slapping at Mr. Changeabout. Mr. Changeabout suddenly got very big and fierce-looking, but old Saucepan didn't seem to mind at all. He just went on hitting out at him and shouted, "The bigger you are, the more there is to hit." So then Mr. Changeabout got very small indeed, as small as a mouse, and ran squealing across the floor in fright. Quick as lightning, Saucepan picked him up, popped him into the kettle, and put the lid on him. "Oh, Saucepan, whatever will you do next?" said Joe, wiping tears of laughter from his eyes. "I've never seen such a funny fight in my life. Be careful Mr. Changeabout doesn't squeeze out of the spout." "I'll stuff it with paper," said Saucepan, tearing some from the box of chocolates. "Now he's safe. Well, what do we do next?" "We'd better get out of here," said Joe, standing up. He turned towards the doorway, but what was this? There was no doorway and no door, only a wall of rock that ran all around the underground room now. "Goodness, how do we get out?" said Joe, puzzled. "This is a very magic kind of place." "There's no window, of course, because we are underground," said Dick. "What in the wide world are we going to do?" "What about the chimney?" asked Fanny, running to the fire. "It looks pretty big. We could put the fire out and climb up, perhaps." "Well, that looks about our only chance of getting out of here," said Joe. He looked round for some water to put out the fire. He saw a tap jutting out from the wall and went to it. He put a pail underneath and turned on the tap. The water was bright green and soon filled the pail. Joe threw it onto the fire. It made a terrific sizzling noise and went out at once, puffing clouds of green smoke into the room. Joe stepped onto the dead fire and looked up the chimney. "There's an iron ladder going right up," he called in excitement. "Come on! We shall get dirty, but we can't help that. Hurry before anything else queer happens." Up the ladder he went. It was hot from the heat of the fire, but grew colder the higher he went. "What an enormous long chimney," called back Joe. "Is everyone coming?" "Yes, yes," called 6 voices below him. Joe climbed steadily upwards. At last the ladder came to an end. Joe clambered over the top of it and found himself in a most peculiar place. "This looks like some kind of cellar," he said to the others as they scrambled up beside him. "Look at those sacks piled up. What do you suppose is in them?" "Let's look," said Dick, who was always curious about everything. He undid a sack and, goodness gracious me, out poured a great stream of bright golden pieces of money. Everyone looked at it in astonishment. "Somebody very rich must live here," said Joe at last. "I never in my life saw so much gold. I can't believe that all the sacks are full of it." He undid another sack and outpoured gold again. Just as everyone was running their fingers through it, marveling at the gleam and the shine of so much gold, there came the sound of quick footsteps overhead. A door above them opened, and a gleam of sunlight shone onto a flight of stone steps leading up from the cellar to the door. A tall man in a pointed hat looked down. "Golly, it's an enchanter," whispered Moonface in a fright. "We must still be in the land of spells. Oh dear!" "Robbers, thieves, burglars!" shouted the enchanter in a loud voice. "Servants, come here, capture these robbers. They have undone 2 sacks already." "We don't want your gold," cried Dick. "We only wanted to know what was in all of these sacks." "I don't believe you," cried the enchanter, as about a dozen small imps came running past him down the steps into the cellar. "Capture them, servants, and tie them up." The little imps pulled everyone up to the cellar steps into a big sunlit room. Its ceiling was so high that nobody could see it. "Now tie them up," commanded the enchanter. Moonface suddenly snatched a kettle from saucepan and snapped the string that tied it to him. He went towards the enchanter fearlessly. "Wait!" he cried. Much to the astonishment of all the others, "Wait before you do this foolish thing. I am an enchanter too, and in this kettle I have Mr. Changeabout. Yes, he's a prisoner there, and let me tell you, if you dare to tie me up, I'll put you in the kettle too, with Mr. Changeabout." From the kettle came a small squealing voice. The enchanter turned quite pale. He knew it was Mr. Changeabout's voice. This is most peculiar," he said. "How did you capture Mr. Changeabout? He is a very powerful person and a great friend of mine." "Oh, I'm going to tell you what magic I used," said Mr. Moonface boldly. "Now, are you going to let us go, or shall I put you into this kettle too?" "I'll let you go," said the enchanter, and he waved them all towards a door at the end of the room. "You may leave at once." Everyone rushed to the door gladly. They all ran through it, expecting to come out into the sunshine. But alas for them, the enchanter had played them a trick. They found themselves going up hundreds of stairs, up and up and up, and when they came to the top, there was nothing but a round room with one small window. A bench stood at one end and a table at the other. The enchanter's voice floated up to them. "Ho, ho, ho, I've got you nicely. Now I'm going to get my friend Wizard Willie, and he'll soon tell me how to deal with robbers like you." "We're in a trap," groaned Joe. "Moonface, you were very clever and very brave, but honestly, we are worse off than ever. I simply don't see any way out of this at all." How can they escape? Moonface looked all around the room at the top of the tower. "Well, we're in a nice fix now," he said gloomily. "It's no use going down the stairs again. We shall find the door at the bottom locked. And what's the good of a window that is half a mile from the ground?" Joe looked out of the window. "Gracious," he said, "the tower is awfully tall. I can hardly see the bottom of it. Hello, there's the enchanter going off in his carriage. I suppose he is going to fetch his friend, dear Wizard Willie." "I don't like the sound of Wizard Willie," said Silky. "Joe, Dick, Moonface, please think of some way to escape." But there just simply wasn't any way. No one wanted to jump out of the window. They all sat down. "I'm dreadfully hungry," said Bessie. "Has anyone got anything to eat?" "I may have some pop biscuits," said Moonface, feeling in his pockets, but he hadn't. "Feel in your pockets, Joe and Dick." Both boys felt, hoping to find a bit of toffee or half a biscuit. Dick brought out a collection of string, bits of papers, a pencil, and a few marbles. Joe took out some of the same kind of things, but with his rubbish came a pink jar, very small and heavy. "What's in that jar?" asked Bessie, who hadn't seen it before. "Isn't it pretty?" "Let me see. What can it be?" Joe wondered, as he unscrewed the lid. "Oh, I know. We saw a witch selling whiz-away ointment for broomsticks in the land of spells, and I thought it would be such fun to rub some on Mother's broomstick to see it fly through the air. So we bought some. Smell it. It's delicious." Everyone smelled it. Moonface suddenly got tremendously excited. "I say," he began. "I say, oh, I say." "Well, say then," said Joe. "What's the matter?" "Oh, I say," said Moonface, stammering all the more. "Listen. If only we could get a broomstick, we could rub this pink ointment on it and fly away on it." "Moonface, that's a very good idea. If only we had a broomstick, but we haven't," said Joe. "Look at this room, a table and a bench, no sign of a broomstick at all." "Well, I'll run down the stairs and see if I can possibly get a broomstick," said Moonface, getting all excited. "I saw some standing in a corner of that room we were in. I'll do my best anyway." "Good old Moonface," said everyone, as they watched the round-faced little fellow scurry around hundreds of steps. "If only he gets a broomstick." Moonface hurried down and down. It did seem such a very long way. At last he came to the bottom of the stairs. An enormous wooden door was at the bottom, fast shut. Moonface tried to open it, but he couldn't, so he banged on the door loudly. A surprised voice called out, "Hey there! What are you banging on the door for? What do you want?" "A broomstick," said Moonface loudly. "A broomstick?" said the voice, more astonished than ever. "Whatever for?" "To sweep up some crumbs," said Moonface, quite untruthfully. "Dustpan and brush will do for that," cried the voice, and the door opened a crack. A dustpan and brush shot in with a clatter and came to rest by Moonface's feet. Then the door shut with a bang and was bolted at the other side. "A dustpan and brush," said Moonface in disgust. "Now, who can ride away on those?" He banged on the door again. "Now what's the matter?" yelled the voice angrily. "These won't do," said Moonface. "I want a broomstick." "Well, go on waiting," said the voice. "You won't get one. I suppose you think you'll fly away on one if I give it to you. I'm not quite so silly as that. What do you suppose my master would say to me when he came back if I'd given you one of his broomsticks to escape on?" Moonface groaned. He knew it was no good asking again. He picked up the dustpan and brush and climbed the stairs slowly, suddenly feeling very tired. Everyone was waiting for him. "Did you get it, Moonface?" they cried. But when they saw Moonface's gloomy face and the dustpan and brush in his hand, they were very sad. They all sat down to think. Joe looked up. "I suppose it wouldn't be any good rubbing the whiz-away ointment onto anything else?" he asked. "Would it make anything but broomsticks fly away?" "I shouldn't think so," said Moonface, "but we could try." "What is there to try on, though? We haven't a stick of any sort." "No, but there's a table over there, and this bench," said Joe, getting excited. "Couldn't we try on those? We could easily sit on them and fly off, if only the magic would work." "But it won't," said Silky. "I'm sure of that. It's only for broomsticks. But try it, Joe." Joe took off the lid of the jar again. He dabbed a finger into the pink ointment and rubbed some all over the top of the wooden bench, which was very like a form at school. "Now for the table," said Joe. He turned it upside down, thinking that it would be more comfortable to sit on it that way. They could hold the legs as they went. He rubbed the ointment all over the underside of the table. As he was doing this, everyone heard the sound of horses' hooves clip-clopping outside. Silky ran to the window. "It's the enchanter come back again. He's got the wizard Willy with him," she cried. "Oh, do be quick, Joe. They will be up here in a minute." "Moonface, Silky, and Saucepan, you sit on the bench," said Joe. "You girls and Dick and I will sit on the table. Hurry now." Everyone scrambled to take their seats. Silky was trembling with excitement. She could hear the footsteps of the enchanter and the wizard coming up the steps. "Now, hold tight in case we really do go off," said Joe. "Ready, everyone? Then whiz away home." And goodness gracious, the bench and the table began to move. Yes, they really did. They moved slowly at first, for they were not used to whizzing away, but as the children squealed and squeaked in surprise and delight, the table rose up suddenly to the window and tried to get out. It stuck. It couldn't get through. "Oh, table, do your best," cried Joe. "The enchanter is nearly here." The table tipped itself up a little, and then it could just manage to squeeze through the opening. The children each clung tightly to a leg, afraid of being tipped off. Then at last the table was through the window and sailing away upside down, its 4 legs in the air, carrying the excited children safely. It whizzed off over the land of spells. Joe looked back to see if the wooden bench was coming too. It had to wait until the table was through the window. Just as it was about to jerk upwards to the window, the enchanter and the wizard Willie had come rushing into the room. What would have happened if the old saucepan man hadn't suddenly thrown a kettle at them, goodness knows? It was the kettle with Mr. Changeabout in. The lid came off. Mr. Changeabout jumped out and turned himself almost into a giant. The enchanter fell over him, and Mr. Changeabout, not seeing who it was at all, began to pummel him hard with his big fists, crying, "I'll teach you to put me in a kettle." Willie hit out at Mr. Changeabout, not knowing in the least who he was, or where he had suddenly sprung from, and there was a perfectly marvelous fight going on, just as the wooden bench flew out of the window. The enchanter saw it going and tried to get hold of it, but just at that moment Mr. Changeabout gave him such a hard punch on the nose that he fell over, smack again. "Go it, Changeabout," yelled Moonface. "Hit him hard." And out of the window sailed the bench, with Moonface, Silky, and Saucepan clinging tightly to it. Far away in the distance was the upside-down table. The table whizzed steadily onwards, over hills and woods, and once over the sea. "We've come a very long way from home since we've been in the land of spells," said Joe. "I hope the table knows its way to our home. I don't want to land in any more strange lands just at present." The table knew its way right. Joe gave a shout as it flew over a dark wood. "The enchanted wood!" he cried. "We're nearly home!" The table flew down to the garden of the children's cottage. Their mother was there, hanging out some clothes. She looked round in the greatest astonishment when she saw them arrive in such a peculiar way. "Well, really," she said, "whatever next? Do you usually fly around the country in an upside-down table?" "Oh, Mother, we've had such an adventure," said Joe, scrambling off. He looked up in the air to see if the bench was following, but there was no sign of it. "Where's the bench?" said Dick. "Oh, I suppose it will go to the faraway tree, as that is where the others live." "Gracious, I feel all trembly. Joe, I'm not going into any more lands at the top of the faraway tree again. It's just a bit too exciting." "Right," said Joe. "I feel the same. No more adventures for me."